Welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. Today I'm joined by Stacey Capizzano, who is running for Rhode Island State House District 5, which is located in Providence. She's running as an independent. Stacey, how are you today?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for giving me your time for this. I can only imagine how tight the schedule is with almost just 1 week to go until Election Day. Currently, we're filming this on Monday, the 31st, Halloween night. My
Yep.
first question, it's a bit of a general one. What made you want to run for elected office?
Well, the last straw was Marsha Rangland Vassal decided to not seek reelection, and I knew what to do. But leading up to that point, a little over a year ago, I'm a registered nurse and working locally. I saw what the vaccine mandates were doing to healthcare in Rhode Island. And it was terrifying. I didn't think they'd actually go through with it, but they did. I mean, healthcare is already a mess. They're making it worse. And clearly it was a political move. So that catapulted me into the scene of local politics. I found myself at the state house more. I started finding myself at school board meetings and stuff. And that's what kind of got me on the scene.
And as I mentioned in the introduction, you are running for the seat as an independent against the Democratic nominee. Where would you say
Yep.
you lean politically?
I lean more conservative and like average person common sense. I don't like a lot of this extremist stuff that seems to be going on at the state house. Teaching pleasurable sex to middle schoolers, like, no, come on. We need to be able to teach them real life skills to be able to go out into the world and be functional adults. Um, that just it's off the deep end, stuff that's going on.
Let's start to talk some policy, specifically some of the policy goals you have on your campaign website. One of them is to reduce burdensome regulations that are affecting our state's small businesses. What are some specific regulations that you would hope to address if elected?
Well, the taxes, I think are too high overall. Business owners pay a lot to hire their employees, um, and have to pay a lot upfront to be able to keep them on that employees never see. And also, there's a lot of regulation they have to deal with. It seems like we have to, in the state, rein in the spending, and not make it so burdensome for people to run their small businesses. And another question that's inevitably wound into this is the minimum wage. That's a very hard question to answer. Yes, it does seem like the wage should be higher. However, at the same time, looking from the business owner's perspective, I don't see how they could take more on. Um, I don't have a simple answer to that. I don't own my own business, but I definitely see both sides, and I'm willing to entertain arguments from both sides. I am an independent after all. So um, I'm not sure to answer your question, to be completely honest, but I'm coming at it as an average person.
Speaking of the minimum wage, that was actually my next question I had. Currently, we are on track to hit $15 an hour by 2025. I know you don't have a specific dollar amount, like whether to raise it higher or if it should be lower, but in general, how do you feel about heading to $15 in general?
I don't see why not. I mean, inflation is going that direction anyway, but again, it's got to be tied in with easing the burden on employers.
Another policy goal you have is favoring transparency, specifically when it comes to education, talking about curriculums and parental rights. Uh, how would this look legislatively?
Um, I see so often, especially lately, it's scary when schools want to take the reins from parents. It seems very arrogant and um, it doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sit right with a lot of other parents. Like, you think you know better than I do on how to parent my kid? Sure, there are a lot of times when parents would seek advice. And we're sending our kids to school, uh, wanting them to get an education. And it seems more like an indoctrination, wanting to take the kids away from the parents and raise them and manipulate them into what the school wants or whatever instead of the parents. Like, what happened to upholding the family? That's the basic building block of a society, is families and individuals. So I want to support legislation that gives parents their power that they do have. And of course, I'm not for any abuse. Of course, I want to support kids, branching out into whatever interests. But yeah, I don't like this trend where the government wants to kind of take over ownership of the kids. It's not right.
And as the concerns about the issues you were raising in that answer are starting to become more in the limelight, so were the calls typically from Republicans to pass things like school choice to combat this, where the tax dollars follow the child and the parents can
Yes.
pick where they want their child to go in terms of education. Where do you stand on the idea of school choice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, during COVID, we saw the real beginnings of this when kids were home doing class on Zoom, and the parents were like, "What did the teacher just say?" And, they started pulling their kids out of school in droves to do homeschool because a lot of, not all, and I think there's a lot of good teachers that might be stuck in the middle here, but there's a lot of activist teachers. Parents were like, "No way, man. Like, I don't know what you think you're doing to my kid." But parents absolutely should have the choice to send their kid where they want their kid to go to school. And our tax dollars, which we pay, should follow that kid. Um, like, I don't want this to be Venezuela. That's not okay. Or Cuba. This is America.
On your website, you also highlight the environment as a top issue you plan to focus on as a legislator. That's a big topic in Providence. You have
It is.
what the Port of Providence is doing.
Yep.
There's two sides of the issue which I have a follow up on. But starting off with a general one, are there any specific areas you would raise attention to as a rep when it comes to the
Well,
environment?
even on a micro level, and this is more of a city council thing, I think, but like illegal dumping, it's terrible. There's certain areas of the city, one of the constituents actually brought up, which is a great point. There's certain areas of the city that are more historically industrialized. They have a higher incidence of asthma, which makes sense. There's more debris, particles in the air, pollutants that are gonna give, especially kids, more asthma. We know about the history of lead paint also in Providence. Like, there's a very famous lawsuit between paint companies and the state. I don't even know how that ended up. Um, the pollutants are a big deal, and that's a public health issue as well. And I'm a registered nurse. I care about health problems. Certain areas of the city are better or worse depending on where you're at. And yes, we have the Port of Providence too, not necessarily in my district, but there's issues that affect us. People that work there and care about issues down there at the port too. So, um, does that answer your question?
Yep. So those would be the specific areas you would want to raise attention to as a rep, just to clarify.
I think those are good starting points.
And speaking of the city of Providence, because you touched upon the illegal dumping, which is more of a city issue, but in the city, there's also calls typically from the left to try to make the city more walkable and less reliant on cars. How do you feel about those goals?
I know my street, even right in front of my house, like there's areas of the sidewalk that are either non-existent or completely broken up. And like it's preferential to walk in the street. I get it because the sidewalk is in the condition that it is. There's this area right down the street, the end of Sunbury Street. Okay. They're very low numbers. For some reason, a few years ago, the rest of the street got paved, but not the very end of Sunbury Street. And there's patches on top of patches on top of patches. The road is in terrible condition. Why didn't they pave it? A neighbor brought that up to me, and he said he hadn't been able to find any answers. I tried calling Department of Public Works myself. I got the same runaround, like, gee, I don't know. We don't have any record of that. So, and we'll make a note of it. Okay. But are they going to do something about it? No. And I'm looking forward to, when I get into office, being able to chase that down a little bit more. Right now, I'm an average citizen. I don't know what else I can do about it, but once I get to the state house, I can figure out how to route that out a little bit better.
Where do you stand on adding more bike lanes?
Um, I don't know that my neighborhood necessarily would benefit from that. Um, I don't know. I haven't talked to my constituents about that per se. It seems like some roads, it might not be a bad idea, but I can tell you Eaton Street is in my district. And a few years back, they made a nice, giant, beautiful bike lane there. And then they spent money to take it out because it didn't work. So I'm not 100% in agreement with the bike lanes. I'm not against it, but it needs to be um,
More case by
uh,
case?
case by case, figured out a little bit better before going in, because that debacle on Eaton Street just looked like a giant waste of money.
And while we're still on the environment, this is more of a statewide topic. It's also on the same ballot that you're running on November 8th. Do you plan to support question one?
I have yet to read my handbook. I'm
No
sorry.
worries. I do have a summary if that helps. So, question one, if passed, would provide $100 million to support the state's goal of the blue economy.
I don't think so. I think we spend enough money already. And that seems very vague. Uh, there's a lot of politicians that want to dump lots of money into things like that's the solution. And I want to see plans. I just, my gut says no.
Okay. I do have two quick non political topics to end things off. I always like to take a step away from the political issues. You have been
Yep.
a nurse, as you mentioned, for 25 years in the great state of Rhode Island. What first made you
Yep.
want to become a nurse?
Well, I did a lot of various Generation X jobs and hopped around in community college to try to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew how to be sciencey and something thinking on my feet and working with people and problem solving. And once I started thinking about allied health, I initially was thinking about respiratory therapy, and the program I applied to, the waiting list was 2 years long. So I was like, screw that. I could go to URI, get a bachelor's degree, and be a nurse and work in whatever specialty I want. So that's how I ended up there. And once I landed on majoring in nursing, I had no second plan. That was it.
Nice. And my final question, it's also a non-political topic. It's a tradition on the show to ask you for the final one. In your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
Oh, beaches. I think beaches, clam cakes. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut, um, about 50 miles from where Naoka did. And I just remember Rhode Island, yeah, sounding like the beach. Occasionally, we would go to Musquamaket or some other westerly beach. So I think that would be it.
It's very true. We are known for our beaches. I'm more of a Newport Beach kind of guy, but in general, I'm not really like into going to the beach. I know it's weird as a Rhode Islander to not want to go, but I guess if I do have to pick one, Newport's my go-to. Stacey, I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much for giving me your time for this interview. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, anytime. And thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.